For American Pickers fans, Danielle Colby's recent comments regarding Frank Fritz are a major development. People have been speculating about Frank's departure and Danielle's thoughts for years. What transpired between Frank Fritz and Mike Wolfe is now something she is prepared to discuss. Have Danielle's loyalties been determined? This is her account of events filled with her own thoughts and feelings. It is not empty rhetoric. Danielle Colby is going to reveal the secret everyone has been waiting for, so be sure to tune in. See the inner workings of TV's top-picking team and learn all about it. Okay, let's get going. Not everyone remembers Danielle Colby as a TV star. She was only a friend pitching in when American Pickers first began in 2010. It was Frank Fritz and Mike Wolfe who set out on their quest to scour dilapidated barns for interesting artifacts. While they were in Iowa, Danielle oversaw the sale of their artifacts at Antique Archaeology. To keep things running smoothly, she fielded calls, searched for leads, and took notes. Her tattoos, lively personality, and candor won over onlookers immediately. But Danielle wasn't there for show. She was the rock upon which the rest rested. Mike and Frank were the show's driving forces behind its success. They remained friends for a long time due to their shared interest in antiques and their shared Iowa upbringing. Their chemistry was obvious to Danielle. Mike had grand ambitions, which is why he was constantly mentioning rescuing history. Frank, on the other hand, was more reserved and interested in the finer points, like the mechanism of an old toy. Their squabble was comical because Frank was after a motorcycle part and Mike wanted an old sign. Danielle would chuckle whenever they would call her from the road and make a joke about who had won the day. Being an integral part of their team brought her joy, even though she wasn't in the car. At first, everything was simple. They would search through people's belongings in search of valuable treasures as they drove around in their white van. Danielle was meticulous about getting the store ready for their returns. She would hear tales of their travels in which they stumbled upon vintage signs or abandoned bicycles. What to do with them would be something she could advise them on. Many stopped by the store to strike up conversations with her and inquire about Mike and Frank. No matter how much fun it was, Danielle knew things wouldn't remain easy forever. Both the show's popularity and the severity of the problems were on the rise. Mike and Frank were people she was familiar with. Mike never stopped thinking and was constantly progressing forward. Frank preferred to savor each moment and give careful consideration to each detail. Danielle stood in the center. Inquiring about his plans, she would contact Frank by phone if she felt he was exhausted. They had trust in her, and she reciprocated. There were hints of trouble even at that early stage. Like a close-knit family, sometimes Frank would be silent and Mike would be overly dramatic. At this time, that is the complete picture. Speculation only at this point. American Pickers went viral and Danielle Colby was there to witness it all. It started off gently. Mike had spent years trying to sell the concept by filming things with an unsteady camera. He would drag Frank along, getting dirty as he climbed into old barns. After leaving the store, Danielle joined them in their search for leads. The networks repeatedly declined the idea, reasoning that viewers would be bored watching two men sort through garbage. But Mike was determined. In 2010, when the History Channel gambled, there were 3 of them. 1 million people watched the pilot episode. For Danielle, it was completely insane. The shop became a zoo in the span of a single night. Many spectators wanted to witness the scene of the miracle firsthand. Out of nowhere, Danielle gained fame. Fans of her TV show were eager to get their photo taken with her. With a friendly smile, she would show them around and fill them in on interesting things like the vintage gas pump that Mike discovered. Insanely entertaining. She had to supplement her staff in order to stay up. In an effort to find out what had happened to Frank and Mike, friends and family were constantly calling and offering pictures. It was too much for Danielle, even though she liked the energy. Mike and Frank seemed to be enjoying life to the fullest. They would contact her from various locations, ecstatic about their discovery. Someone once found a large glowing sign, and Mike couldn't stop raving about it. After acquiring a used fire extinguisher, Frank boasted about it as if it were a prize. With a chuckle, Danielle would jot it down and prepare the store for whatever they might bring in. However, the show had become more challenging. Throughout the year, they spent countless hours on the road filming. Just by listening to their voices, she could tell they were hurt but determined to keep going. But they were all affected by fame in their own unique ways. Under Mike's weight, it sank. Following the launch of his Nashville store, it was a smashing success. Many people patiently waited in line to see him. Danielle thought it looked fantastic. He was making an impression. Being the focus of attention was something Frank disliked. He remained in Illinois and chose not to make a fuss about it. She would playfully tease him, saying, "You're the quiet star, huh?" Grunting, he would shift the conversation's focus. Frank seemed serene, while Mike was quite animated, according to Danielle. She maintained stability at home while it worked on television. She had admirers as well. Her unique style, tattoos, and burlesque performances won her many fans. Many people would comment on her pictures when she uploaded them to the internet. Someone would always tell me, "You're the coolest." Danielle thought it was cute. The arduous days were worthwhile. As soon as she would share shop updates like Frank's discovery of an unusual doll, the fans would go absolutely bonkers. However, she noticed that the show was evolving. They weren't the only ones making selections anymore. Lots of money as well as teams and ideas were present. It was more of a chore than an adventure. The conversation continued to heat up. By 2015, the cost of an episode had increased to $250,000, 0 cents, from $100, 0 cents initially. Danielle could feel the tension rising. In contrast to Mike's desire for every find to be a smash, Frank simply wanted to be honest. A few times she would overhear them arguing. Nothing major, just minor details, like, "We need a big score," Mike would pronounce. Frank would yell out, "I'm not digging for your TV moment" on occasion. Danielle neglected it in favor of tending to the shop. Being the steady, reliable person who everyone could rely on was something she enjoyed. Danielle took pride in the ride's extreme Nabunia. Each week a massive audience tuned in to see the show. From a little store in Iowa to TVs in every home, it was quite a journey, she thought. It seemed too wonderful to be true, so she knew it couldn't endure. Getting famous is not easy. It deprives you and then bestows upon you. She sensed its impending arrival, though she remained uncertain of its nature. Preparing for what might come next, she simply kept the shop running for the time being. Something wasn't right by 2017, according to Danielle Colby. Trouble was brewing behind the scenes of American Pickers despite the show's continued success. Mike and Frank spilled the beans, but she wasn't out picking. There were a lot of hands involved with the show, and the stakes were high financially. Mike jumped on board and tried to make it even more massive. He would contact her over the phone from Nashville to share his discoveries and shop plans. Danielle appreciated his energy, but she sensed that he was anxious. Because he wanted each show to be spectacular, everyone had to put in more time and effort. When compared to others, Frank stood out. He did call, but it sounded like he was exhausted. Danielle was aware that he had been ill with Crohn's disease. He was in excruciating pain, and it was only getting worse. The only thing he ever said was, "Yeah, I'm just tired," in response to her question, "Are you okay out there?" before he would quietly depart. Not even close. The crew informed her that Frank had been absent for days and looked terrible on set, but he remained silent. Danielle started to feel anxious. Even though he enjoyed picking, his body just couldn't handle it. Her hands were full at the store. Even after all this time, people were curious about Frank and Mike. "Where has Frank been?" they would say. Danielle would just smile and say that he was out picking berries. She didn't want to spread gossip, but she knew something was wrong. Frank called less often and Mike was busy. They were growing apart because of the show. Frank lost it once. He called her from a shoot and was mad about something. Mike complained, "He's making this into a circus." Danielle just listened and didn't say anything. She said, "He's just excited." Frank sighed and hung up. She told Mike not to. She didn't fight, but it stuck with her. That kind of thing used to make them laugh, not fight. She wasn't sure if the show was worth it, if it worsened their relationship. She kept the shop open anyway, though, and pretended everything was fine. Fans still didn't see what was wrong. The shows looked great. Mike and Frank were having fun and finding cool things. Danielle knew that the rough spots had been fixed. She thought, that's not the whole story, but she didn't say anything. She liked her job as shop owner because it kept her out of trouble. Mike would come over sometimes, planning lots of things. Frank didn't show up very often. She missed the times when they used to get together and tell stories. It was clear that big things were going to happen by 2019. Frank's health was getting worse. The crew rushed because he missed more shots. Mike didn't give up, but Danielle could tell he was mad. He would sigh on the phone as he wished Frank was there. She wasn't sure what to say. The show was now like a machine that wouldn't stow. After his last American Pickers episode aired, Frank Fritz was no longer on the show. Mike told Danielle Colby. He called her late one night in a low voice. He said, "Frank's done." Mike didn't have much to say when she asked why. "He's not coming back at all." Danielle didn't try too hard. She could tell he was upset. She knew it was going to happen. It hurt even though it was coming. Frank had been a part of this from the beginning with his silly laugh and love of finding strange things. It didn't feel right that the van was moving without him. Frank split his side. He told the Sun later that it had been 2 years since he had talked to Mike. He told Mike, "My back hurts," but Mike didn't even call. Danielle didn't totally believe that. She knew why Frank felt that way, because she had said, because it wasn't her style to call him to find out what was going on, she assumed he would contact her if he needed to. When he didn't, the fans went ballistic, asking, why did Frank leave? They polled online experts. Danielle did not respond when asked, did Mike leave him after seeing the announcements? By posting images of vintage items, she managed to keep the shop open and avoid answering the questions. She preferred to remain neutral. She missed Frank, who, like Mike, had been there for her through thick and thin. "How's it going?" she would ask Mike via text message. Frank wasn't in her thoughts when he would say, "We're taking care of it." It was overly forthright. There was a jumble of truths. The severity of Frank's Crohn's disease had worsened due to his alcoholism, and he required hospitalization 17 times in the span of 2 years. Danielle was informed about it by the crew. To her, he was a complete and utter disaster. When people are in pain, they act. Despite his enthusiasm, she recalls that he made fun of a discovery. His time was running out and it was terrible. Mike continued to fire and recruit additional personnel. Danielle sat through the episodes. They were decent, but they weren't identical. She longed for Frank's energy despite his recent grouchiness. Personal anarchy was something she had to face. The store was still crowded with fans. Everyone was caught off guard by the 2020 pandemic. As long as she could keep the glass open, Danielle spoke through it while wearing a mask. Frank was the subject of many inquiries. She would casually mention, "He's taking a break." The truth was she was unaware of the full situation, but she was reluctant to lie. Mike expressed his sorrow and affection for Frank in an online post, referring to him as a brother. Mike genuinely meant it when he said yes. Danielle read it and nodded. Her mind remained fixed on Frank's remarks. He confided in the Sun his feelings of being second fiddle to Mike, who he saw as the star. Danielle understood. Mike was the public face of his ambitious ambitions. His fans adored Frank because, like most people, he enjoyed picking little things. She didn't believe Mike kicked Frank out, even though he might have felt abandoned. Frank was falling behind while Mike took charge. She wished they had just spoken it out. Danielle kept her head down. Because Frank's van stalled, she had no choice but to follow it. Life, the store, and her dancing were all on her mind. Money, fights, and jealousy were all on the minds of the fans. To her, it was insignificant. Frank and Mike were hurting, and she knew it. At some point, she snapped and couldn't recover. She had no other option but to sit tight and see what happened next. Her words didn't come until later, when she was more prepared. To start, everything changed in July 2021 when Danielle Colby spoke out. Since Frank's departure, she has been the target of fans and rumors. A lot of people were talking about her online. Pick a side. What's wrong with Frank? She snapped a selfie with Mike and posted it to Instagram after realizing she didn't like it. She proudly stated, "Back on the road with my best friend and big brother whom I fully support and stand behind." It was on Team Mike that she was competing. However, she had more to do. Frank Fritz was brought up again in her speech. Things started to take shape as she typed. "I'm really sorry about Frank's death on the show," said the actress. "I am truly sorry for his problems. Over the past decade, I have diligently followed every single show. The accusations are true, according to Danielle Colby, but she has no dramatic backstory to support them. Frank had a lot on his plate, and she knew it was probably more than just his health." Readers went absolutely bonkers. Their question was, "Why do you struggle?" From her, it was unclear. There was no intention of her spreading rumors. She was merely sharing what she knew. Then she wrote something very sad. "Frank caused so much pain for himself that it has been hard to watch. I really hope Frank gets all the help he needs to get better after being sick for years." That hurt people. Danielle wasn't mad. She was actually scared. It hurt her to see Frank get worse. She wasn't mad at or angry at him. She only wished for his health to improve. She was telling him, "Yes, the trouble rumors are true, but not what you think." She said this about why she posted, "The only reason I'm talking to this right now is because everyone is guessing what I said. Because tabloids can't question me, they're taking my words out of context." Danielle was sick of fake news stories making her silence mean something else. "This is how I really feel," she said. "I hope everyone G." Many were enthralled by it. "Danielle seems so real," one reviewer remarked. "Tell us more," she said with an easy smile. "I'm not telling everyone everything, but I've known Mike and Frank for a long time. We've had shop talks and road calls together. She chose Mike because he's always been there for her, but Frank was still important to her. My post was just a look. The rest was obvious, but I said what I wanted to say." Life continued as usual. Danielle kept the shop busy, and people still came in asking questions. She'd smile and say, "Check my post," before leaving. Mike kept picking fights, and I would make him feel better online. Frank remained silent, and neither of us reached out. I had cleared the air and taken a stand, which was my job. The talk about a fight was dead. It was stronger Frank's pain and Mike's push. She didn't say anything else so fans could figure it out. Things calmed down after Danielle's post from 2021, but they weren't easy. Frank Fritz wasn't on American Pickers, and Danielle Colby had to watch what happened. She didn't say much more online. Just dance and shopping pics to keep things light. She knew Frank was in bad shape, though, behind the scenes. His Crohn's had been bad for a long time. She knew he was trying to get better, but it wasn't happening quickly. Danielle didn't call him because she thought he needed some space. She only hoped he would get better. Danielle helped Mike keep the show going. He would sometimes stop by the shop. He looked tired but happy. He would tell them, "We're still picking." She would nod, glad that he was still there. Fans don't ask her about Frank as much now. Some people were talking less because of her post, but she could still hear whispers from the crew. Frank wasn't feeling well. More trips to the hospital mean more trouble. Danielle felt bad. She remembers him grinning like a child as he dragged a broken bike into the shop. That person was getting away. Then 2022 came along quickly. Frank had a big, scary stroke. A team member told Danielle Mike forgot about everything else and went to see him. There were no specifics she asked about, but she heard Mike spent a lot of time there, sitting by Frank's bed. He would bring small things like old pictures and things they had found together. That seemed cool to Danielle. Even though there was quiet, it showed Mike still cared. She didn't come over. She wasn't really close to Frank, but she watched it. Frank took a while to get better. He needed a lot of help after the stroke because it was so bad. Then it all ended in October 2024. Frank died. Mike talked to Danielle. He sounded really upset. He said, "He's gone." She was lost for words, so she just listened. Mike told her he had been there all day and brought things from the days they picked. Danielle had a sore throat. She knew Frank's quirks and finds for a very long time. It felt like we lost a part of the show when we lost him. It wasn't on her post. It was easy to understand. Fans had no idea what was going on. They heard Danielle's post and saw Frank leave, but not this. Mike didn't say anything either. He just posted a short note online about missing his brother. That was okay with Danielle. She didn't want to make a fuss. The whispers started up again, though. Some people say Mike left Frank. Their friendship ended because of the fame. She turned her head away. She had seen Frank fight his body and Mike step up. It wasn't that easy. Danielle Colby finally says something about Frank Fritz after keeping quiet for a while. She's sick of waiting now that Frank has been dead for months. For the interview, she just sits down. Nothing fancy, just her. She says Frank's body gave out. I saw it all happen over the years, the Crohn's pain and everything else. He wasn't pushed out by Mike. Frank had to stop. It goes straight up. Danielle, don't waste time. The reports are true. Not about a fight, but about a guy who lost his cool. She points to the thumbnail and says, "It's time to tell everything. This is for them." She makes it very clear. Frank really wanted to pick, but his health wouldn't let him. They were in and out of the hospital 17 times in 2 weeks. She had seen Frank squirm during calls and Mike get tense over plans. He didn't quit because he didn't like it. He quit because he couldn't do it, she says. Fans are interested because it's not crazy news. After that, she gives it to Mike. She says Mike stood by him. He was there after the stroke, paid the bills, and brought old things to the hospital. He was there when Frank died. Danielle doesn't think she knows. She does. It was from people close to them she knew. She says, Mike didn't talk about it much, but he didn't need to. He showed up. This is how she puts an end to the reports of a fight. Mike wasn't really bad. It was life. For a second, she talks about herself. She says, I've known them since the beginning. Frank was quiet and liked to find little things. Mike had big dreams and saved a lot of stuff. They were great together. Danielle smiles as she thinks of it. It was hard because of fame, long days, and a lot of pressure. But it wasn't hate that broke them up. Frank's body just broke. She's not mad or sad, being honest. Fans now have the whole story, and it's heavy. Many people wanted a story with a lot of fighting and backstabbing. That doesn't work for Danielle. She laughs a little and says, it's not that exciting. Frank fought for his life, not Mike. Frank didn't fight to keep the show, Mike did. She had given hints about this in 2021, but now she's said it all. She says, I didn't say more back then. It wasn't correct. It is now that Frank is gone. She's not seeking popularity. She seeks to know the truth. The conversation was brief, but effective. They really made something cool, she says. Their thing on American Pickers was going after junk. Mike continues the trend, and Frank's role is still present. Danielle has finished. There were no emotional outbursts or lengthy speeches. She claims the stories are true because she gives facts, not just words. Fans can sense and experience this. Quit trying to guess. She told them the story based on her observations over the years. It's a straightforward conclusion, she says. That's it, not a big deal, just everyday life. Both of them have done great. After leaving it there, Danielle walks away. Frank is no longer there, Mike is still picking, and she has told everything. It's not a trick, it's the end. That makes her happy, and she hopes her fans do too. Now that the whole story is out, it's her turn to tell it. Finally, Danielle Colby gave us the truth about American Pickers, Frank's health, and Mike's honor. It's clear now there were no fights, just hard times and sadness at the end. What do you think of Danielle's story? Does it match what you thought? Put it down below. We're reading all the comments. Sign up for more videos like this. Feel free to take a look.